tell you what, I'm glad that you said to call you Dawson because my first name is actually Matthew and it only
Okay.
has one T in it. So I have like a fucking lifetime of misspelled documents and I have a
Yeah.
really, I hate my first name just because of that. So
It's funny is I can always tell how someone knows me by what they call me.
bro, I screen
I've
my
got,
phone calls that way.
yeah, I've got my legal first name because Matt is my middle name. So
Mm,
I've got my legal first name, Matt, and then Dawson. And if someone calls me and says, "Hey, can I speak with James Dawson?" I'm like, "You have no clue who I am." I can always tell someone knows.
100%. Every single time somebody calls me and they ask for Matthew, or the smartasses that want you to know that they know your name is spelled a little different, and they say things like, "Is Matt Hugh there?" Like, shut the
Yeah,
hell up. You know what it is. Like, stop
yeah.
trying to make me. So I get it, man. I feel your pain, and we'll only use it once. Matt Dawson's here, founder of Dawson's Creek Foundation. This is the Tragedy
Dawson's Peak.
Academy. What's that?
Peak.
Peak.
Dawson's Peak.
I thought I said Peak. Did I say Creek?
Yeah.
Yes. Well, we were going to talk about that anyway, because I got stuck when I was looking at sites earlier, and it made me laugh so hard because there are like 3 that sit right around the name of yours, and I was like, does Dawson speak or is Dawson on a peak? I'm like, I'm trying to
Exactly. Time to time. Yeah, I've seen that before. Yeah.
right. So 6-time world record holder, achievements in extreme adventure sports, including climbing the 7 summits, skiing the South Pole, rowing across the Atlantic Ocean, and traversing the Mojave and Death Valley, man. You're an inspiration in boots. Tell us a little bit about yourself and welcome to the show. I genuinely appreciate you being here.
Jay, listen, I sincerely appreciate you having me on, and I apologize jumping in there on the correction. I forgot we'd even started recording, so
Dude,
sorry
no,
about
that's
that.
what it's all about.
Yeah, no, man, is again, thank you for having me on, and all the stuff that you mentioned, or I've had the opportunity to get out and do some cool stuff, literally on every continent around the world. Over the past couple of years with Project 7 for Soldiers, with a charity that I started, Dawson's Peak Foundation, which I'm sure we'll get into. All that is a part of that. And really, it's really not what we're doing; it's why we're doing it. Yeah, I've gotten to get out and do some cool things, but it's really is to facilitate a greater discussion and to discuss about living with a greater sense of purpose and to make our lives about more than just ourselves. And that's really what I'm trying to do as an individual, what we're trying to do as an organization, and just to exemplify, to people that we're all capable of so much more than we can imagine, or a lot of times than we want to admit, because with that power comes responsibility that we don't always want to pick up that other end of the stick.
People really do not like that statement used with them. They like to tell people with your power comes responsibility. But what they don't like to admit is that we won't take on power because it has responsibility, even though the capability exists. It's a fear of failure in my mind. It's a fear of exposure. It's a nudity to yourself in front of God and everyone that you may put your all in and fall on your face. But I'm here to tell you, you're supposed to.
Yeah, look, I love that you said that. Because so often, especially today, with the social media and commercialism and consumerism, and everybody's got something to sell you. It's all about reestablishing your power and fortitude, all this stuff. And it's I think what's sold to people is that that their fear, that they're scared, that they're not strong enough, they can't do this, they can't do that. I really think the fear that most people have, that they're not unwilling to admit or don't really understand, is that they're scared that they do actually have that capability. Because with capability comes responsibility, and to understand, like, oh my God, I can make a difference in the lives of others. And now when I sit home and I eat Cheetos on the couch instead of doing what I'm supposed to be doing, now there's a greater consequence that comes with not performing to your fullest capability. And so you can't let yourself off the hook as much as you'd like to.
No longer can you give in to the fact that you don't have the ability to discern. You now have that capability, so it is a conscious choice to take up acreage on that couch. Like that is
exactly 100%. To discern and to say, hey, I have the ability to do X, Y, and Z. Because I hate to break it to you, but if you really dedicate yourself to it, we all have the ability to do more.
100%. It's a choice. It's a choice to give into a personal character that you've devised that gives you the ability to reconcile each situation in your favor. I didn't get up and do the mountain because, well, I got hurt back then. I have this responsibility now. And, if I had his physique, I might have been able to do it, but I wasn't blessed that way. So they come up with all these reasons, but they don't realize is that's your peak. That's Dawson's peak. You have your own to go summit, right?
Exactly.
It's your own example of a peak. People try to compare themselves, especially on social media. They see someone like yourself with 2 kettlebells running backwards while doing backflips, getting ready to go climb a mountain, right? And they're like, well, I'm never going to be able to climb a mountain because that's a requirement. Well, you may not ever need to climb a mountain. That might not be your thing, but there's something out there that you like to talk about purpose, correct? I think purpose is an extension of authenticity. You're brought here one way. You're made one way. To be anything different is a slap in the face of whomever or whatever made you. And when you live in that authentic space, purpose presents itself. So I like to say that in order to get to your purpose, you better start respecting yourself and getting in a situation where you fall in love with who you are so that is a natural step for you. So you can see the purpose. We've all got shit smeared on our glasses where we can't see what's sitting right in front of us, and that's opportunity. I want to give you a chance to talk about something in particular, though, and it sounds like the next Oscar-winning movie title, but can you tell me about a moment in Nepal?
Oh yeah. Yeah. So it's, well, first of all, I don't even know why you have me on here because everything you're saying, I think you're saying it so well.
It's a team effort, man. Thank you. I appreciate that.
And I agree with it. And just quickly about, talking about purpose is, that's our mission as an organization, is to get people to explore and understand and live with a greater sense of purpose. And to your point about living that kind of that uniqueness is, what we talk about is the way you live with purpose is to identify, develop, and offer your unique gift. And what that means is we all have this unique, innate gift that we're here to offer the world, that only we can offer it in a certain way that other people can't. So you can do things that I can't do. I can do things you can't do. The guy living on the street can do something neither one of us can do. And that's why we're here, because the world needs all of our gifts to operate at its fullest. And that's a huge part of what we do as an organization and what I try to, or what I talk about, individually. So I think you said that very well.
I genuinely appreciate that. I like to use the analogies that are, stained glass or a puzzle, right? It requires that unique piece in order for the bigger picture to come together. Like if you're a puzzle piece, if you're a unique puzzle, please stop trying to be a fucking corner. Don't try to be a side. Don't try to be black when you're white. Don't try to be white when you're black. Be the piece that you are, the multicolored whatever, and your surroundings will come to you. You'll fit in your spot because you're fulfilling your purpose, right? You're fitting into that situation where all people benefit from it. It's a disservice to your family, your friends, and your fellow man to not bring that to the table because you're forcing them to hide their own uniqueness out of fear of judgment. But if everybody shows their cards, then it kind of takes away the ability for anybody to be scared anymore.
Right. Now, look, you said that well, and I think that's a great kind of interlude in what you were just talking about Nepal, about understanding purpose and how we apply that in our lives. Is and I'll shorten the story down, but I can expand upon it if you want me to. But years ago in 2016, I was just at a extremely dark place in my life where for decades I'd battled just kind of personal demons and a darkness, and regardless of how big my bank account was or how many girls I went out with or how many cars I bought or whatever, I just kept going deeper and deeper, and I wasn't sharing it with anybody. And it just reached to a point where I'd had enough, and I was either going to go all into life or go all out of life. I mean, literally, like I'd reached that point.
I completely understand this. This is the precipice with which the show started. I was at that juncture in life. You're either put up or shut up.
Yeah, and for people who've been there, they know exactly what I'm talking about. And it's a dark place to be, and I want to help people avoid that darkness. But at the same time, my mother passed away. I broke up with a serious girlfriend, and everything was just kind of collapsing in on itself. And I knew the level of change I needed to make wasn't going to be made reading a book or talking to a counselor once a week or taking a cold bath, every other morning or something like that. So I went to Nepal. I spent 3 weeks hiking, largely alone around the Mount Everest region. And a couple days in, I'm in the tiny village of Tengbo Che. In that village, there's the largest Buddhist monastery in the area. And luckily,
Beautiful.
I was invited to join a Buddhist service there in the morning with the monks. So for about an hour, I'm in an ancient monastery that's as picturesque and Hollywood is set as you can possibly imagine, with these chanting monks, just working on being present. And I
Mm,
was getting hit with these waves of energy that were literally taking my breath away at points, where I was just struggling to breathe because there were just these just this sense of vibration I could feel through
mm,
every fiber and cell. And that lasted about an hour. After the service, I was walking across the village. I sat down. I was leaning against a small religious temple called a stupa, looking at Mount Everest, which is several days away, and watching the sunrise and the clouds move across. And I mean, it looked like a movie or like some cheeseball commercial. That
hmm
was just the quintessential reason why people come here. And out of nowhere, I just start bawling like a baby. I mean, just spit and snot and just tears and hair everywhere and this and that. And all I can remember was rolling over on my left hand side in the fetal position in the dirt. At the time, I'm 240 pounds. My beard is damn near as long as yours. I mean, it's down to here. And I'm just sitting there, just shaking and trembling in pain. And something inside of me said, listen, don't try to understand this. Don't try to explain it. Don't try to rationalize it. Don't try to fight it. You need to experience this. And I don't know what
hmm
that was that talked to me, but something did. And that went on from, and it was to this day, it was the most excruciating pain, physical and a mental, spiritual that I've ever been through. And after maybe 10, 15 minutes, I thought, I got myself together, walked into a little tea house which like a little, little dining lodge to have some breakfast. They brought me some oatmeal, and literally, as soon as I take my first bite of oatmeal, I mean, just the waterworks start again. And for people who've heard the story, this is as true as I can possibly say it is. I cried so long and so hard over that bowl of oatmeal, covering my face because I was embarrassed because I was surrounded now by 10 or 15 people. I remember watching my tears fill up that bowl. That's the volume of tears we're talking here. And after another 5 or 10 minutes, I looked up into the back right corner of that room and something spoke to me. You want to call it God, the universe, a collective unconscious, energy, whatever it is. And it said two things I'll never forget. It said, you're not living with a sense of purpose and your life is only about you. And I mean, I still have goosebumps. I mean, whatever, I've told that story a million times. I still get goose. Yeah.
Got him right now.
I'm telling you, I knew two things in that moment. I knew what my purpose was, and I knew that my life would never ever be the same. And for the first time in my life, I finally understood the magnitude and the power of every single second that we are here on this earth. That it
Mm.
can create this type of change, or this has this magnitude and power over us.
There are no limits. There are absolutely no limits. Limits are applied by us mentally in advance. We tell people piano's hard. It's going to take you a while. Fuck you, don't tell me that. I might have been a prodigy before you planted that
Yeah.
seed, right?
Yeah.
I firmly believe that. I think that we're capable of so much more than we realize, right? And I think for a person like yourself to explain this situation, I think you're giving other people a voice. I don't think you're alone. Right. And I say that because I feel like sometime around the pandemic, I feel like all of us felt a change. We knew there was something bigger than us that we had to accomplish. Right. And I say the word we, right. And I'm using that because for myself, there was a moment in time like this for me. And it's amazing that you say this, and I'm looking through and you're discussing it. And while the words are not the same, the scenario is mirrored in so many ways. I think it's how it's defined by the person that receives the message at the moment that they do. Again, place your deity in the spot. I don't care, right? Whatever applies to you, God, Allah, Jesus, Buddha, doesn't matter, right? Buddha's not a god, right? But place that there. And for me, I was again at the position you were in life where you just felt like you were not fulfilling yourself. You were doing things that were not your purpose, right? And we can look great on paper, right? You can buy an Audi, you can put a theater in your house, you can go get, you can go take a trip to Costa Rica, all these things, but they're temporary highs, right? And they don't tell you that. And I was doing that. I was plugging those holes and I wasn't addressing the fact that I needed to cry.
Yeah.
Right. I needed to hit the ground in order to plant that tree to grow into something else. And in order to do that, my way was meditation. I just one day sat down and said, this is it. There's nothing else I can effing do. Bottle vodka's not going to do it. Running 100 miles isn't going to do it for me. Doing all these different things are not my key. And my key was I sat down and started meditating. And I did it every single day. Every single day I would get there. And I'd do like 10 minutes. And it got into 20 and 30 and 40. And that's when I started to realize different things about myself. I started releasing those things like you did on that ledge. I'm sure there's so much energy that you sat in meditation with those monks had to release so much inside of you, because what people don't understand is someone like myself, and I'm going to even go out on a limb and say probably someone like yourself, does not like to be told how you're going to feel about something or how something is going to lead you to this. Like, I'm not that dude. Like, don't tell me, because I'm going to assume that it's tainted now and I'm just doing it because you suggested it. Like, especially when it comes to outside of myself, right? Because I'm a logical dude. But I can tell you, after some meditation and, finding more about myself, I went for a walk with my dog right after meditation. I'd done for like 45 minutes. That's a solid meditation, right? Mm-hmm. You've really relaxed. You come back out. I'm walking my dog peacefully. I have a wood line near the house. I'm standing by this huge tree, and I don't know if the same is with you, but for me, it wasn't words. It's the way that you have to describe it to people. But for me, it wasn't words. It was an understanding. It was like I knew, and then I didn't, or what I didn't know, I now knew. Like immediately. It was like hey. And for me, my definition was, and it took me a moment to put words to it. To me, it was, hey, we're all playing make-believe. Right? And it was kind of how I was interpreting at the moment. And then it all started to unfold as I thought about it. And it was authenticity. It was serving your authentic purpose. And that all of the things that we take on from the outside are a choice. That we're actually choosing to feel pain, depression, anxiety, all these things. I'm not saying that they're not valid. They come from a place, a seed that was planted long before you could ever understand. So it's not like you can do anything except for trim it now. Like, take care of your garden. But for me, it was something similar to that. And that's why I started doing the show. Because it was like, I've got to give people a platform to discuss how they got through these trials, these tribulations, or to bring people together and show that we're the sum of our experiences, nothing more, nothing less. We each have prescription glasses, right? No two people will see the same thing because their prescriptions aren't comprised the same way. So if we have a show like this, we get someone like yourself who is a banker or a financial person who is looking at things logically, numbers, predicting things, and then all of a sudden standing in Nepal, looking into the corner of a room going, where's life? What is life? Why have I been doing this? What does that do to you?
I think you said that very well, and I love what you were saying, and it points out a great difference, but a similarity in that they say, one of the hardest things, if not the hardest thing for someone to do, is to sit quietly with themselves.
You're so right.
So when you're going to the mat, especially when sounds like you did kind of that first, it's been a learned, progression for you.
Breath work, different types.
Exactly. So it's like when you started that first time and started working your way through it, dude, there's no difference there's very little difference between that and what I'm doing, going out and climbing a mountain.
100%.
The whole purpose of it is to get out of your head, and it's to get down into your body, and then to be able to freely move between both of them. Because, to your point about me being in finance, is I was at, the Naval Academy, then the Wharton School, and just all these numbers, analytics, and then, for 15 years, I was selling companies between, $30 million and $250 million. So I mean, it's just a lot of numbers, a lot of processes, a lot of, all this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And and for years, all I could do, the only thing I could feel was pain, confusion, frustration, anger, rage.
You weren't being you.
And I was just always in my head. And then once I was able to get out of my head, get down into my body, and then I was finally able to start moving freely between the both of them and had that final connection again. And to your point is that enabled me to be my more authentic self. And so now I'm not stuck in one section, kind of either hiding from the other section or lacking the inability to get into that other section, but rather to move freely throughout my entire body. But again, it all comes back to exactly what you're saying is whether you're out there climbing a mountain or whether you're using meditation on a mat, these are all just different vehicles for the same exploration or the same journey.
That's why I say religion is pizza, man. It's just all different toppings on the same pie, pointed to the same fucking spot on the globe, the Mesopotamian River Valley. And that little plastic thing that keeps the box from closing on us is probably God. I don't know. Like, we're all doing the same things. They're just a different lens that we're viewing them through. Like, these things these conclusions that we're coming to, they exist in all the different religions around the world. They sit in there embedded. They're just described differently. Like right. We had a nun, a Carmelite nun on, and she was talking about prayer and meditation. And, those monastery nuns, they go into the long-term 24-hour, 40, they take vows of silence. It's no different than finding your breath work and focusing on the faith that breath will return. I couldn't put a pin on anything outside of myself with the word faith. It just didn't make sense to me. People are like, I have faith. I have faith in this. And I have faith. No, it's faith, right? Like, give me a bucket of it is what I was asking for. It just didn't make sense. And then when I started meditating, faith became apparent to me. And it was the moment that I let breath return to me. I didn't ask for it back. I didn't force it back. I wasn't watching my breath and going like an egotistical being, thinking that I actually have control over this situation when I don't. In that moment, when I allow breath to return, is the moment that I realized that there is something to have faith in, right? I have faith in the return of breath and the return of my heartbeat. Every single moment of every single day, so much so that I'll ignore it, right? So,
I think that's well said, man.
I think more people could benefit, though, from seeing someone like yourself talk about a slice of the pie or stand on a slice of the pie that belongs to people that aren't necessarily getting the credibility for what they've been working on so hard their entire life to get us to effing here.
Yeah. It's a lot of people also, they want to think, and look, I was certainly guilty of this, at times previously, and I'm still guilty of it, currently from time to time, is that we want to believe that there's something so innately different about what we're going through, about the pain or about the suffering or about the whatever. And really, it's about gaining that proper perspective. It was one of the greatest things about me, where I came to understand is that there is nothing at all unique about my suffering or my pain or my confusion or the turmoils or whatever. And to your point is we're all the same people looking basically for the same thing, just going about it different ways. But when we're in the midst of it, we want to believe that there's something that's so great that we're isolated in some sense, that no one could possibly understand it or that no one's been through it before. And therefore, it kind of gives us an excuse of not to deal with it or to put it off or to not deal with it as constructively as we could. And it's certainly not to minimize or diminish what people have been through, because obviously there are some very difficult situations out there, and some of which I understand and many of which I don't understand. And I'm not claiming to understand. But what I do know is no matter what any of us have been through, it's been experienced millions or billions of times by millions of people. And once I came to understand that, and to understand that there's a place or there's a perspective to these things that I'm experiencing, it really helped me. That's one of the ways I was really able to surrender into these things. We'll talk more about that, I'm sure. is to finally start surrendering into them and getting past them to understand a greater sense of perspective.
Mm.
Not only in that perspective led to, on the other side of it, a greater sense of appreciation. And that was a huge turning point in my life.
Gratitude, if you will. That word is so underappreciated and underrecognized, and it's not defined properly in any way, shape, or form, right?
It's yeah.
Meditation was another thing that gave me gratitude. It allowed me to see that a little better. And I think it came from probably climbing mountains allows you to see the non-existence of time. It slows things down. It allows you to see that there's time between decisions, thoughts, and emotions, that gap is very large, right? So all of my decisions were always going to be based off of how I felt. But after I started meditating, I was able to see, say we had a coffee cup on the counter and it always pissed me off, right? For whatever reason, it leaves a ring, it does whatever it is. Hate it, right? Start meditating and I start seeing the cup before I get mad. There's a gap in time, right? And that gap in time allows me to recognize that there is a choice in between seeing it and reacting, right? And then I got to ask myself why. First, that was pretty amazing. I was like, it's a fucking weird thing. I'm like, why? And then I get to ask myself, why am I mad? Why am I mad about a coffee cup? Something so small. But the reality was there was something back in my past that made me care about aesthetics or what people will think of a ring on my counter, like I'm a dirty piece of crap or whatever weird crap is in the back of my head. But it allowed me to see that gap. Curious, you say surrender, right? You're climbing that mountain, and I know what it's like to run long distances, not like you or anything like that. I was in the military for a little while. So you get in scenarios where you only hear yourself breathing. Like that is it. There is nothing else in the world. What is that moment like? And is there surrender in that moment?
It's a really interesting question. And an entire topic is there's a time to fight and there's a time to surrender. And so often I think people kind of think, oh, it's always about fighting and overcoming and conquering and battling through and all this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, that's all well and good. And there's a time to, just, try to, work your way around it or let something go past you or through you or this and that. And it's just, what we need to understand is you're not trying to be the same thing all the time. There's a time for each of these things. And when we talk about, surrender is not letting something just kind of roll over you. It's not giving up. It's not going with the flow.
Mm-hmm.
This is an active, to your point, decision in order to try to meet your needs in new and more beneficial ways.
Beautiful.
And when we talk about, strength and surrender, is the way that we gain that strength and the way that we effectively surrender is that we see our fears and concerns and trepidations and hesitations, and we actually move towards them. We allow them to come into us, and you don't fight them. You experience that pain to its absolute fullest, because to fight it is to feed it. But the most important part of it is once you're done experiencing that thing to its absolute fullest, is you're talking about kind of like that breath is, you let it go. You let yourself release these fears and concerns out the other side, and you don't enable them to take root within you. It's kind of like, that old adage of you hold a hot stone, the only person that you're hurting is yourself, and the harder you hold something, the more you're going to hurt. So it's you release that hand, you let all this stuff pass through you, And it has changed my life tremendously. You want to talk about going out and climbing mountains and rowing oceans, this, that, this, that. You can't be hard all the time. And the majority of the strength that I exemplify in this, if there is any, in this stuff that I'm doing, I would say 80% of it comes from surrender. And probably 20% of it comes from I'm just going to tough it out right now and suck it up and get this thing done. And it's once I started kind of playing with that and really understanding it over the past couple of years, that's where my life has just changed, tremendously. And also it gives me the opportunity to kind of save my energy to where, dude, for decades, all I did was just fight everything. And the way that I approached the situation was I'll either go through it or over it or around it or whatever. And in worst case scenario, I'll just run into it or whomever's in front of me as long as I have to. And one of us is going to break and it won't be me because it felt like a life or death situation. And I've got too much to lose. And you do that for literally every single day for decades and it wears you out.
Living off of I want it more is not a way to live your life.
No. And I'm like, dude, it's just a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. But I'm like, I'm going to battle for this. Everything was a battle.
I don't even like the top crust, and you're not getting that either, you motherfucker.
But it was just, once I learned how to truly surrender and the strength that not only comes from surrender, but that it takes to surrender, to stand there and to stay unmoved in the face of your fears and to allow them to move into you fully. That's true strength. I mean, and it's changed my life. It's helped, found the organization, set the multiple records around the world, all that kind of stuff. And it's made such a difference in my life. So now for the first time, I can actually feel a wider array of emotions. I can feel like we were talking about appreciation, gratitude, love, not only giving love, but receiving love, all these things that I never could feel before.
Yeah. And I went off on a tangent earlier. You said gratitude again. And that's what that stoppage of time really created, was my ability to take in my surroundings and see what has been truly given to me in life. That small piece of tile in the bathroom that's shaped like a seashell, but was hand done at some point, was somebody else's career. And maybe they went to their wife and said, look, they took my suggestion for this next big, manufacturing deal for this particular housing company, Lennar or whatever, and they're going to use my tile, babe. I've been working on this and this one's mine. And I'm standing there taking a whiz on it because the water's hot and I don't want to run to the toilet. Right. Yeah. Where's the gratitude in it? Right. And then I look at it and I'm like, I couldn't do that. Right. But that person was using some kind of talent. The smallest things out there deserve gratitude. And there's a really cool repercussion to gratitude. It comes back. The more you give it, the more you get it back. People will show you gratitude because you're giving gratitude. It's a mirror. You show people a shitty face, they're going to look back at you with a shitty face. Right? It's bizarre how that unfolds, but it's true. 9 times out of 10, stink face gets stink face, right? But I love that you pointed out that you need to go through things, right? You have to live through those moments, those trials, those tribulations, or the good, whatever it is, because we can covet good moments and try to relive them, and that's going to suck too, because it's just going to create a vacuum. But I like to use the analogy of a rope, right? We start out as a length of rope. This is going to mean a lot to you since you climb, right? So this length of rope you start out with, for every trial and tribulation, imagine as you went up that mountain, when you had to get over a particular ledge that was super hard, they gave you a choice. We can let you go by it, but you have to tie a knot in your rope, right? It's kind of like going through life. Every time you hit a trial or tribulation, your rope, you tie a knot in it, right? Or you go through whatever it is. What happens to something if you continue to tie knots in it? It becomes useless. It becomes a big knotted, wadded mess, right? Until you sit down with your knot and start unraveling it, whether it be meditation, whether it be climbing rock, whether it be throwing freaking weights or writing poetry or gaming or whatever it is, dude. No matter what it is, that's how you get into your rope. You find that place, you find your purpose, and you get the opportunity to untie the past knots, but you learn, like yourself, that the knots are in play, right? That knots are a choice. And you're not just stuffing all that shit inside yourself so that you're 40, you get divorced, go find a young girlfriend and try to drive a car to happiness. Ain't gonna happen, right? You can keep
Yeah.
driving, but you're not going to get happy. You have to go through those things. But I want to point out, because I think that you could probably confirm this or maybe give an extra perspective. I like thinking that those walls that we're discussing, just like you said, you're going to run into it, right? I feel like the fact that it's a wall is also an illusion, that it's a silk and it's a self-made issue that we're choosing to have issue with. But once we realize that, we can walk through all of those things freely and not allow them to have control over us.
No, look, that's a very interesting topic, and that's something that I, people that are close to me, and we talk about this stuff a lot. Is we talk about that, and in relation to just kind of that in general, and the stuff that that I've been doing lately is there are two sides to it. There definitely are physical walls.
Absolutely.
If you're out there, to your point, if you're going to sit on the mat for 12 straight hours,
yep.
In that, or if you're going to try to run X number of miles, climb X number of feet. So there certainly are those things that biologically, physiologically are barriers that you've got to figure out ways which typically you can overcome.
Mm-hmm.
But that being said, to your point, yeah, these things that psychologically we deem as walls are mostly things that we create in our minds. Because look, if you and I were sitting there next to each other and we had the same objective, we would probably look at this thing in two different ways, and we'd probably see two different sets of walls that we're going to try to overcome. Where for you, like, hey, there's a wall 5 miles out. I'm like, what are you talking about? There's 37 walls, 4 here and 5 miles. Right. That's what I'm concerned about.
Yep.
It's just like we can both see the same situation, but different things there.
And John sees public speaking in it and doesn't even want to go.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. But that's his wall.
To your point, there are so many of these things that we identify. We make these things. We create these things in our minds that aren't there in a practical sense of reality. It's just in our internalized reality that we make are more than they're actually there. I completely agree with that.
It's amazing the barriers that we'll give it ourselves. And I think it's a great thing to talk about, given the fact that you are an endurance athlete at the end of the day. And endurance is one of those things that people like to quit once they've been doing something alone after a while, right? They don't want to continue to listen to their breath. They don't want to continue to row out in the middle of the Atlantic. So many people will throw their hand up and say, I quit, right? But you haven't. You continue to push through these. You continue to check them off the block. And I know that at this point, you're doing it for much more than yourself, right? Because you brought up the organization that you have and who you're working with. And I would be remiss to not give you a good amount of time to talk about what it is that you're trying to accomplish day to day with these charities and organizations. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
I appreciate you mentioning that. The organization that I founded with my good friend Jay Jablonski is Dawson's Peak Foundation. We're a fully registered 501c3. Our mission is to inspire the discovery and pursuit of individual purpose, which ties in, exactly what you and I have been talking about. And the way that we do it is we create large global one-off expeditions where, our athletes, in this case, me, can undertake, and viewers can watch, me do all these different things and draw parallels between what I'm doing in their own lives and say, hey, if this old fat guy can go do this, then imagine, what I can do in my life.
Hey man, you're not going to insult me on my show, right? Yeah. Hold on. No, I'm kidding.
But it's the first project that we have is called Project 7 for Soldiers, which you've alluded to a couple times, where in the course of 12 months, I was able to climb the highest peak on each continent, ski to the South Pole, row the Atlantic Ocean, and then trek solo and unsupported across the Mojave Desert and Death Valley.
Jesus.
We got that done in just over 11 months. I was also supposed to go to the North Pole, but that's been canceled every year since 2020. And I was also going to
the conspiracy. That's where they're hiding everything. The aliens are there.
There's a lot going on up there right now. And at the same time, I was supposed to fly a plane around the world, but the cost of that flight literally went up 4 or 5 fold. So we decided to spend that money elsewhere. But it's to the point you just made, is the whole purpose of this is not to just watch some guy go out there and climb a mountain.
Exactly.
Before I started doing it, I couldn't tell you where Everest was. Like literally, I didn't know where on the map Everest was.
Love that.
And I was like, if you asked me to go to row a boat for a couple hours or to climb a mountain, I'm like, that sounds terrible. Why would anybody?
That sounds terrible is
Yeah,
the correct reaction, right?
yeah, I'm like,
Initially.
yeah, I'm like, bat, you want to run through death? What the hell? You're this. You need to get a better hobby because this sucks.
You need a better
But
hobby.
it's just all this stuff is because like, look, most people at the end of the day, and you said this earlier, is most people are never going to climb Everest or row an ocean or this or that, which I'm very well aware of. But yeah, not to overuse it, we all have our example of what Everest is in our life, or an ocean or whatever, something that we're concerned that we might not be able to overcome or conquer or approach or whatever it is. The reason that we're doing all this stuff that we're doing, number one, is I like being off the couch, but number two, it's to facilitate a greater conversation. That's it. It's simply a Trojan horse to discuss about purpose and capability and duty, to say, hey, listen, you're capable of more than you want to believe, and you have a role to play in this world, whether you like it or not. So you have not only greater capacity, but you have a greater duty to others to go from being self-centered to service-centered, and to apply your life to help elevate others. And that's really the takeaway of everything that we're doing.
I absolutely love that, because you're empowering people. There's a difference between telling people what they should do and lighting a fire within someone, or smashing that glass that's sitting over an already existing flame that we all have, that's just sitting there unused, untapped potential. Potential left on the table is the worst thing you can do with life, right? I don't want to die and look back and see half a tank of gas. Fuck that. That means that I didn't travel the full distance. I missed half a tank's worth of shit, right? So I want to be able to say that I took action on what I was truly here to do. You're describing these places and people are going to be amazed, and they should, right? But those places, just like you said, can represent other things to other people. But I believe that you are always capable of doing what you're doing now. You're now allowing yourself to do it. And by doing that, right, by having that internal confidence that you can accomplish these things, you're lighting the fires of so many people to take on, again, their Everest or whatever it is that they were intended to do. I think more than anything, license to be yourself is one of the most important gifts that you can give to people. The moment that we crawl out of that shell and we embrace everything about ourselves, when we stop turning left because we got some kind of thing on our face that we don't like to show in a picture, right? Or we're going to go out and we don't like wearing suits. We're just doing it for the game, but we allow ourselves to put on the gear we like to wear and get out there and run. You're showing people that they don't have to conform, that there is a level of success for all of us to be reached much easier through authenticity. I bet the moment you shed those suit coats and start climbing mountains, it's like removing a weighted energetic vest, right? You might be carrying weights, you might have a pack, you might have gear, all that shit, but you don't have that burden on your heart that comes with that corporate fake life that we try to live when we're in there. And we have to fake like we agree with everybody to our left and right. But when we're giving other people license to do what you're doing, that's the true gift that anybody gets in this situation.
Yeah, and it's not always about doing more, because there's certain elements of it about doing more and being more and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's also about the quality of the effort that you're putting in, and the quality of the life that you're living, things like that. So if you say you're a father with 4 kids and you're working 60 hours a week and this and that, look, I don't expect you to go out and devote 5 more hours a day to doing X, Y, or Z. But it's about making the most out of operating at a higher level of consciousness behind why you're doing what you're doing, and having that level of integrity behind what you're doing, and living on everything that you're doing to the fullest extent, and putting that thought and effort behind what you're doing, and understanding that literally there's a purpose behind every single thing that we do. I don't care if it's making a cup of coffee or tying your shoes or talking to somebody or avoiding somebody, whatever. There's a purpose and a result behind every single thing that we do. And we understand that there's a weight and there's a gravity to all this kind of stuff. And to take our lives more seriously, and like you said, if you don't want to die with a half a tank of gas, is so often we don't set a standard for ourselves. We just kind of meander all the way through, and we'll listen to this or listen to that and do this for a couple of days and that for a couple of days and look for a hack and look for a shortcut. And it got hard, so I decided to quit. Then it got easier, so I got back on it. It's like you've got to set a standard and to take this shit more seriously than a lot of us do. Because, we get one shot at this thing and you're like, oh, well, it gets hard. I'm like, it's supposed to be hard. You're not supposed to just be able to tiptoe through this stuff. There's nothing fun about doing something easy. There's nothing rewarding about that. And I honestly believe that we were all created and we're all meant to do hard, difficult things. And that doesn't mean climbing a mountain or doing, squatting 600 pounds. That means showing up every day for your kids the way you should, showing up for your job the way you should, showing up for your friends and family, showing up for the stranger the way that you should. When you say you're going to do something, you do it. It's like you set a standard and you meet that standard. And I don't care what the hell is between you and that standard. And I think I think we've kind of lost that sense of dedication and seriousness today. And because every time you look around, someone's selling you an excuse or a shortcut or a hack or something about just, you're supposed to feel good. Take this pill, buy this, buy that, buy this, buy that. And it's just, it's getting us off track.
It really absolutely is.
It's going to lead to that real sense of fulfillment we're all looking for.
Yeah. That sense of fulfillment. A lot of people will trash if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life, right? And I used to trash that, right? I used to slam that statement because it's fucking full of shit, right? If you find yourself not fulfilling your purpose in the role that you've chosen to support your family in, then the onus is on you not just to continue that job, but to find your purpose outside of that so that you aren't lacking in who you are. You can use it as a bank and a method to support yourself, or you can find a way to use your natural talent to create it as well. But you have to find an outlet for your purpose. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to do anything. You're going to sit in the victim chair. That fucking chair's got cup holders. It reclines. It's got a little, screen that'll come up in front of you. And you put it together yourself so nobody can stop you from making one, right? And the only thing you need to do to get to success is fulfill one requirement: action. That's it. Action. If you continue to get up and you do what you love each and every day, the days that it sucks still don't suck because you're doing what you love, and you start to see your failures as successes way in advance because you're like, this is never going to happen again. Guess what I learned? Fuck yeah. I don't have to do this twice ever again, right? That's the way I see audio engineering, music, podcasting, voice acting, stuff I would have never done before. Like, if you told me I had to go and do solution architecture for a fucking Fortune 500 company moving offshore, units like I used to do, I'd want to chew on the business end of a shotgun or drink vodka until I passed out. Because who the hell wants to do that, right? Unless your purpose is to do that, right? If you find what it is, you will be happy.
you said that well, and I think a lot of people get confused between what they do professionally and what they can do as a person, or who they are as a person. Look,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm not taking away from anything that anybody does. You can be a plumber, you can be a janitor, you can be a NASA astronaut, you can do whatever. But just because that's what you do, that might not be your purpose in life. So don't get that confused, because I think
Mm-hmm.
a lot of people do. A lot of people say, "Oh, well, I'm just a fill in the profession." Like, no, that's what
Mm.
you do to put food on the table. That's not necessarily who you are, or the way that you're going to try to contribute to a greater degree, to society. So don't get that confused, and don't self limit thinking that
Mm.
that's I'm just fill in the blank.
That that's fill in the fridge. That's not fill in the heart. Two different
Yeah,
things, right?
exactly. Yeah,
So if you want to fill in your blank, you got to find either a job that contains that purpose that's fulfilling to you, or find your side quest, man. For all you gamers out there, side quests are where it's at, right? You head out there, go find your loot, your happiness, your love. It might be stopping right outside of 7-Eleven and that guy sitting there against the wall. Do you just stop and have a conversation with him for a few minutes? Let him be heard. That could be worth its weight in gold. Change someone's life. It's limitless, right? Just like you said earlier, there are no limits to what we do, or the waves that we can put in society with the smallest the smallest pebble, right? Into the water creates how many ripples? They're endless until they reach a shore. But guess what? Every time you help somebody find themselves or get back on their feet, or you give them those accolades that they deserve for their hard work, you're giving them an opportunity to pick up stones to throw for other people, right?
yeah,
You're getting that opportunity for them to do just little things that give people license to do the bigger things in their lives that they've been withholding themselves from. It's your job to be you. There's nothing else. There's nothing easier, actually. At the end of the day, it's like standing on a cliff with a blindfold on and being told to jump is authenticity. You're scared to death to be you. You're on that cliff, and the only thing you have to do is step off of it and you'll be successful, right? Nobody wants to do that. You step off the cliff, and what it is, you find out that authenticity really is just a fucking curb. You were only about 4 inches above where you were, and that's all it is to be yourself. And you got to leave all the BS behind you, all the masks, all of the intentions, all of the implicit biases, all of the ways that you judge people. You can leave it all behind, because it's not a requirement in the authentic self. Because those are all a shitty set of tools that are issued to you through society, your parents, and your upbringing. But the moment that you can drop that gear and pick up your own, right? The tools of experience, then and only then can you go out and start to affect change, right? And
yeah,
give these other people the opportunity to do such cool shit, right? Because you might be giving somebody the license to be the best fucking piccolo player on the planet, who ends up with a group like Outkast playing some other shit that revolutionizes music. Nobody fucking knows what you're giving somebody when you're showing them that you don't give up on yourself.
yeah. No, you've said that well. You've made a lot of great points since we have a chance to get started. It's let's say there was one point I was going to about two things. Really, it's you mentioned, and I really like this, about stopping and talking to that guy outside the 7-Eleven,
Mm-hmm.
something like that. Kind of a fun thought experiment that I play a lot is when I'm out and about, is I look at every other person around me as
Mm-hmm.
just another version of me from a separate universe, and
Mm.
now we can kind of put together in the same universe. And it helps me to show a greater sense of compassion and empathy and appreciation, and to also to feel more connected. And that ties back to what we were saying earlier, is, dude, we're all the same things we're all the same people looking for the same things, roughly, but going about it in different
Yeah.
ways. And it's like me, it's like my normal home gym here, or home gym meaning in LA, is in the middle of Hollywood. So it's a pretty seedy area at this point.
Mm.
I can't tell you how many times I get done, 9, 10 o'clock at night, I'm walking out and there's somebody asleep there on the sidewalk in a box. And I walk by them and I'm looking at them. I'm like, the line separating me from this guy, most people want to think that it's miles wide. I'm
No,
like,
it's not.
Razor effing thin. Razor thin. I'm like, so basically, there's nothing separating me from that dude. It's just a couple of decisions, a couple this, a couple that, and I'm there or he's where I am. And keeping that love of appreciation about this connectivity you were talking about, but also you mentioned also earlier about things sucking. It's so critical for people to understand when you are on the path that you need to be on. It's not going to be Care Bears and roses and unicorns and all this kind of stuff. It's there. It's still going to be, if you're doing what you need to be doing, it's going to be hard, difficult work. But you can approach it in a rewarding way. I think embrace the suck is something that gets way overused today. It's when we put ourselves into these situations because they're difficult, because we want to test ourselves. To me, that doesn't suck, and it's not suffering. Suffering is I get a phone call and someone has unexpectedly passed. I get a phone call and I've got a terminal disease. I get a phone call and it's horrific things like that. That's suck and suffering. And look, I've been through my share of physical pain, emotional pain, this and that. But far too often we misconstrue when we're pushing ourselves into these zones. Look, it's discomfort and it's hard. It ain't suck. It ain't suffering. And I think keeping that right perspective, it helps us to get through those things. But far too often people are like, oh, it got too hard. I'm like, even when you're on the path, it's difficult. Like, before this podcast, I went out and I ran, for almost 3 hours. And I was not in the mood.
I saw my therapist and told him I was going to talk to a bottle of testosterone for an hour. I was like, this guy makes me feel like I should get out and run like right now.
Yeah, man, I tell you, I had a big leg workout on Monday, like a big heavy workout. And today was a long run for almost 3 hours. And 5 minutes into it, everything's hurting. 30 minutes into it, everything's hurting. I'm like, I don't want to be doing this. But I knew that if I just kept going, I was doing this thing for a reason. I knew if I just kept going, it was eventually like your breath returning. This was eventually going to come to me. And finally, I got to that point where I totally forgot about it. Next thing you know, it's 2 hours later and I'm close to finishing a run up and everything feels fine. I feel good. I'm actually a little faster than I thought I was going to be, climbed a little more elevation than I thought I would. And it's just, you got to give yourself a chance.
Why do we do that? Like the gym, for me, sans getting injured, going for the day and getting hurt, that just sucks. There's no way to get around it. But I have never left the gym saying that was a bad idea. I've never left the gym mad that I worked out, sad that I worked out, depressed that I worked out. I've always left happy.
Yeah.
Like I'm legitimately in a better mood because I have wrung out some of the negative shit in me. I've left it on the ground there in the form of sweat. There it is, right? But for some reason, we can't bridge that gap to what it's going to feel like afterwards with the decision to go.
But expand that out a little bit. No one in the history of this world has ever woken up on Saturday morning and said, you know what? I wish I'd have drank those 3 more beers. Or I wish
You're
I'd
so right.
Pack of cigarettes. You know what? I'm so happy that I chose not to go out and be with my friends last night. I stayed home and ate ice cream by myself and cried. It's just like there are certain things that no one's ever said these things, and it's about performance and about connecting, and it's about giving ourselves a chance and about improving. And it's just, I think it relates to those proverbial walls that you were talking about earlier. Is we build these things in front of us that we think are insurmountable walls when they're nothing but illusions to try to get us off the path of some deeper fear inside of us, of something we're trying to avoid for some reason. Because most of this stuff comes down to that we're trying to avoid pain in some way, shape, or form. And to your point, if you have a chance to sit quietly with yourself, whether that's climbing alone on a mountain or whether that's sitting on a mat or whatever it's doing, we can start to understand what is it that we're trying to avoid. because by our nature,
Mm.
we're risk averse and we're avoidance, avoiding, by nature, we try to avoid things. And typically, rather than pursuing pleasure, we try to avoid pain. And it's just understanding what is it that I'm trying to avoid.
Interesting.
And that's it. And I think, once I was able to do that, that helped kind of change my life. And but even today is I'm far from perfect. I struggle with that on a daily basis. Is I still do things to avoid pain, but now I can feel when I'm avoiding something. I'm like, wait a minute, what am I trying to avoid here? Like, what are you
That is
scared of?
so profound. To avoid pain or pursue happiness, which are you doing? Because you can only do one or the other.
Listen, it's a choice. That's it. You do one or the other. When we say happiness, I don't use the term happy in my life. I'm not a happy person.
I don't see you cheesing across the Atlantic.
Yeah, I never factor in happiness in my life. I never say I'm happy about X, Y, or Z. It's not who I am. It's not what I do. But when I say happiness, I mean about contentment, fulfillment, performance, purpose, those kinds of things. And look, so you either go towards that or you're trying to avoid something on the other end. That's everything we do.
Pathological avoidance is like the American dream. To be alive is pathological avoidance of pain. Right. Yeah. And I think that you're really hitting on a head there, man. That is, I'm going to go out today and ask myself when I come to different junctures, whether I'm avoiding pain or pursuing happiness. When I sit in front of the computer and I start to work on my audio or my music or something like that, ask myself, who is it for? I like to think that we paint our pictures in life authentically, right? We have what we're capable of putting on the canvas in front of us. But if we spend our life looking over our shoulder for the approval of what we're painting, we will never have an authentic image in front of us. We will have what other people expect of us, right? So I want to end on that because I think that given the opportunity, we can paint our individual pictures and bring them together and recognize that they are greater part or a small part of a greater picture that is stained glass or is a collage on a larger wall or a puzzle piece or whatever it is. But if you're looking over your shoulder for the approval of others while you're painting your picture, you're never going to get there. It's always going to be someone else's shit.
The only thing, I think you said that very well. The only thing that I would add is that it's not only a matter of you can do this, to your point about the collage, is that you owe it to the world to do it.
Yes.
You owe it to me. I owe it to you. I owe it to that guy that's sleeping on the street next to my gym. And he owes it to me in order for him to be his authentic self, but in a positive, enriching, productive sense. Because everything we do contributes to this collage or to what I call the universal collective, and it needs all of us contributing, and no one's contribution is any more special than the next person. Is that, we all matter, but none of us are important. And there's a distinction there.
But we all are one entity. When we look at it at the end of the day, we say the human race, right? And when you have something killing itself from within itself, that's cancer, right? And us doing these detrimental things to each other within the human race is just the detriment of ourselves. It's to the detriment of ourselves, and it is a cancer. To be those things is to take away from our full potential, the purpose of humanity. We're talking about the purpose of individuals, but there's a greater capability for everyone when we all start to embrace authenticity, passion, purpose, and live to that fullest level. We're going to see a level of society like we've never seen. Maybe that's heaven. Maybe Earth is already where we are, and we're the dumbasses with a mental illness, and the rest of the creatures are looking over their shoulder at us going, fuck's wrong with them? Don't they realize where we are? Right?
Yeah.
I think we're there. I think people like you are showing us. You're also telling me that I need to see more of this beautiful planet. I'm not giving it enough of an opportunity to amaze me. I think that a lot of us should get out there and try to see more, even if it's locally. Get out, get in the air, breathe, become part of what you are a part of. We put these walls around ourselves and sit inside these homes, but we're no less a creature than anybody else or anything else crawling around on the planet. We belong in the dirt. We belong walking around in it. We belong foraging around because we're animals, and there's fulfillment to being part of nature.
It's exactly what we were talking about earlier. Is so often, especially in this day and age, we're living in our heads. And every year it's getting more and more in our heads, and we've forgotten how to connect down into our hearts, into our bodies.
I love that.
When you're really there, is you're not stuck in one or the other. Is you're freely moving between both of them, and it is absolutely critical that we find time each day to get outside in some capacity and touch something that's real. Touch a tree, touch some dirt. Hell, eat some dirt. I don't care what it is.
You're not wrong. We're supposed to be touching the earth.
It'll change you chemically. It'll change you physiologically. It will change you in every sense. And it gives you that sense of connection. And, because far too often we're sitting around watching computers, touching plastic, synthetic materials all day, food coming in boxes. And all it does is just create more division, both, internally within ourselves and then externally in us as societal creatures here.
I saw a documentary, and we can wrap up after this, but I saw a documentary a long time ago, and I can't remember the name of it, that was talking about wearing shoes and how we became disconnected as a species from the earth the moment that we started putting a barrier between our feet and the ground. Yeah. And that over time, it's created like an energetic imbalance because we're constantly not grounding ourselves, grounding ourselves on the ground, and that our body requires it. I thought it was super fascinating. And there's a certain legitimacy to being part of nature. And I just thought it was super cool that you're not one of those people, though, that run with the 5-toe shoes, are you?
No. I have. Yeah, I don't. Yeah.
You don't? No, I was talking to Gary's. It comes on the show periodically. He's an old co-host, and he works with the UFC. Been with them forever. And we were talking about guys that show up to the gym with the 5-toe shoes on. He told me to ask you if you wore 5-toe shoes.
I know you want to wrap up, but just quickly on this is think about this. Is some days, I'm sure there's a lot of days for most people they don't touch anything that's natural.
No.
Besides breathing some air and seeing the sunlight or seeing the moonlight, they don't touch a tree, they don't touch grass, they don't touch dirt, they don't touch anything. And and look, every species is supposed to develop and evolve, but evolving from nature to that point is not what we were supposed to do. And it leads to that greater sense of discontentment and disconnection in a lot of regards. Yeah.
Yeah. Nobody's bad or nobody's upset floating in a river unless they're dead, right? Or they've been hit. You feel good when you're actually. Some of the most content times in my life have been sitting on the ground and folding a leaf in my hands on the seams. Yeah. I know that sounds weird, but if I get a leaf in my hand, I still do it to this day. It's dead. It's in my hand, whether it was live, or it still has that pliability, but I will sit and fold it and touch it on the seams over and over again until it falls apart. Yeah. Because I feel like that's where we're supposed to be. It feels content, kind of like, I guess, like a fidget spinner, but for like nature.
Yeah. No, I'm with you, man. Totally with you.
So tell everybody where they can find you, and we'll wrap up.
Yeah. So the easiest thing to do is the website is just Dawson's Peak, PEAK.com. That's my personal site. It also links to the foundation site. And then something I'm really excited about is October 22nd is the dropping of my first book, which is Strength and Surrender, which talks about all the stuff we've talked about. So it's about my, it's more than just about, how tall the mountain was, how cold, the weather was, how strong the winds were, because most people don't give a shit about that. So more than that, it's a story about my personal transformation over the years. It does include, all the world records, all the mountains, all the physical stuff. But also in there are universal lessons that I've learned along the way that are kind of interplaced throughout the narrative. There are also a handful of personal meditations that I use on a daily basis. And then lastly, there's a section about, ask yourself and apply yourself, or you can take the things I've just shared with you and figure out ways of instituting it, very quickly in your life. And
That's
hopefully people will enjoy the story and find some things that help them in it. And then last thing I'll say is with Project 7 for Soldiers and the foundation, we didn't get into this, but 100% of the net proceeds that we raise from Project 7 for Soldiers benefits the Gary Sinise Foundation and Hope for the Warriors, two of the highest rated veteran charities in the country. So I haven't made a dime in the past several years on Project 7 for Soldiers. And please get on, donate. They'll get 100% of the net proceeds.
100%. We'll support that.
Yep.
We'll go ahead and also make sure it's in the show notes. Everybody knows where to find you. Dude, I can't thank you enough for being on the show and being the person that you are. Right. I like to leave with, I believe that we have the opportunity to be a lighthouse in our life. Doesn't mean that we go out and tell other people what they're supposed to do, but they can take their cues from us being what we were supposed to be. And that is something for others to look up to. And you are doing that, sir. I genuinely appreciate you. You're welcome back anytime. Now I need like a, where in the world is Carmen Sandiego? I'm going to put a Matt Dawson, get a little pin and put it there. So Dawson, dude, you're an amazing man. I appreciate you. And like I said, welcome back anytime. Remember, everybody, be cool and keep learning.